Okay, now a charge is any move that will put you in physical contact with the enemy. Charges have to be declared. They're declared before movement and before you roll against the command response table. The reason for that is when you declare a charge, you're basically showing your units starting forward toward the enemy, and the enemy has a chance to react depending on the situation. So the first thing it gets into is the types and levels of charges. Basically, there are, the regular charge, like I said, is declared, and if you have sufficient actions to execute it, you do. Two other types of charge in this game are opportunity charges. When a unit rolls really well, it's far away from the enemy, but it rolls really well, it has the opportunity to execute a charge that it didn't declare right away. And the reason for that is twofold: to try to take into account the initiative of the local commander, but also to give you the opportunity to take a second look at a charge that you decided wasn't a good idea in the first place, and now you decide that it is. I've seen plenty of opportunity charges that really shouldn't have gone in, but you got that opportunity, that second chance, and people take that second bite of the apple. The last one is the mandatory charges that come when you're close to the enemy and you roll an aggressive action, and your local commander just decides he's going to charge the closest guy to him. So those are the three types of charges. So it goes ahead and covers those. They've got some illustrations on how those work, how troops are moved. And then you get into reactions. Reactions cover a couple of different things, but they deal specifically with things like skirmishers and cavalry. When cavalry charges infantry, obviously infantry are going to try to form square. So it shows how to form square, and it shows how to break square. Although that probably should, during the charge. So how to form square and how to break square. It also covers the rules on how skirmishers work, how they screen advancing troops and protect defending troops, how they then fall away and allow the charging unit to get forward into contact. It also talks about what happens if the skirmishers are basically by themselves. They generally can't stand against the charge. They're not formed, so they have to pull away. So those reaction moves are covered. Then it gets into a little bit, we're going to get into the actual melee itself. Once you charge and make contact with the enemy successfully, then you're going to get into the melee. Okay, so the melee section, again, is fairly complicated because it is a decisive action. And when you get somebody into a melee, you're going to get some kind of a decisive result. So the first thing it talks about are restrictions. When you can charge, who you can charge. Cavalry charging into a town or into a woods is a bad idea. They can do it, but they're going to be disordered. So it's going to cover those kind of situations. It also covers, the next section covers the melee combat potentials. These are done by stand again. And there are melee potentials for infantry, for cavalry. Even artillery has a very small melee potential because the gunners will defend the battery. It talks about the melee potential modifiers. And then it talks about what happens when cavalry charges infantry. So this is when you get into the forming square. And if you form square and the enemy hits you, the enemy's going to try to break that square. So all that's covered in this section. So once you get through that, if you're in square, then it moves on to determining the melee potential and odds. Potential is, like I said, by stand. So you count the number of stands in contact, a certain number of supporting stands. You multiply that times the points per stand. And then you want to get the odds. If you can mass troops against a single enemy, you're going to get an advantage just because of weight of numbers. There's modifiers for having 3-to-2 odds and modifiers for having 2-to-1 or more. And those modifiers affect morale. Then you're going to get into the melee morale test and results. Basically, the game comes down to each side determining the morale of their attacking and defending unit, modified by casualties, by position, by a whole bunch of other things. Most of them are pretty straightforward and recur all the time. And then you're going to start rolling dice. And it's a situation where if both sides break, or if both sides hold, you ignore that result and you roll again. If you do that 3 times, where either both sides are broken or both have held, then that means it's a protracted melee. You're going to inflict more casualties, and then you're going to start rolling again. And the rolls may change in the second time because there's going to be additional casualties inflicted. There may be a change in odds because one side lost a stand or something like that. So you'll roll a second time. And technically that just continues until you get somebody loses. And it's, like I said, it's fairly detailed, but once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it goes pretty easily, so it's not a big deal. All right, the next section we're going to get into some miscellaneous rules. All right, so the miscellaneous rules cover some odd situations. It covers troops in towns, how they occupy a town, what a town is, things like that. It also covers how you inflict casualties on leaders. In this game, leaders can't be directly targeted. Instead, what happens is if there's combat around them or somebody's destroyed or demoralized, there's a chance that the closest leader is going to be killed. And if you kill a lieutenant, there's a chance that the corps commander might be close enough that he's going to take a shot. But it's all a random chance kind of thing. It also covers what happens with engineers and fortifications. Engineers can be used for a couple of things, but the most important thing they do is build fortifications and do bridge work. So it talks about what you do with the engineers you have in your army. This is something you can add when you build your army using the army points. How many points you have determines what kind of fortifications you can build, and you can put them anywhere. It also covers things like demolishing or repairing a bridge or throwing a pontoon bridge across a stream or river. All of it's covered in the rules here. The next section is called the optional rules. These aren't used very much. There's a quick move option in there that I put in there specifically for tournaments or for convention games, and it does speed up the game quite a bit, but I've never really had anybody try it and play it and say they liked it better than the original set. And finally, down below, there's a section on the option of having half batteries. That's especially important for units or for armies that have limited artillery, for instance, the Spanish or the British. And half batteries allow you to spread out your limited artillery instead of keeping them in those 12-gun batteries. And then finally, there's some suggestions on how to play LaPetite Armee. Mostly it's just like a tactical guide. It covers things like how you use different troop types, how command and control works in the game, and things you should watch out for. It covers mass and economy of force, how to use combined arms tactics, the use of reserves, and then just a summary and closing on how to play. The last 4, 5, 6 pages are army lists. Using a point system, you can create an army. Each different nationality has a different army list, and basically you take those points, and the lists require you to add a certain number of troops minimum based on those points, and also tells you the maximum you can have of each type. And I'll have a separate video on how to create an army using the army list, but there's one for the French. There's one for the Russians, of course, the Austrians, the Prussians, the British. There's an army list for the Spanish. And there's also one for minor powers. It's kind of a generic list that can be used for Bavaria or Italy, any of those other lesser powers that don't need a specific list for them. And finally, you have a section on how to create multiple corps armies. So that's the whole thing. Like I said, 42 pages from front to back. It's a fairly simple set of rules, fairly easy to play, but I think very satisfying. I am working right now, game testing a different kind of counter-move system that doesn't allow quite so much of the got you situation of units moving way across the board quickly and threatening you. Basically, the turn is divided up so that you have a chance to react as things happen. So that's LaPetite Armee. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and if you did, and would like to get a copy of the game, I'll see about getting one on my website. If I don't get it on the website, you can email me. My email address is in the description, and I'll be happy to send you a copy that way. All right, thanks for watching.